I stayed by Pablo's side as he rose from a poor, insecure student to a sought-after new star in the tech world. 7 days before our engagement, his childhood sweetheart came to see him. Pablo, my mom is sick. Her only wish is to see me get married. Even several of his close childhood friends stood by and tried to persuade him. Pablo, Julia is like a little sister to us. Help her just this once. It's only a ceremony. Sister-in-law probably won't mind, right? If the two of them had wanted to be together, they would have gotten together long ago. When we were kids playing house, Pablo and Julia were always the husband and wife pair. Everyone can just treat it as a joke. Pablo fell silent for a moment, then turned to look at me. I remember we booked that hotel for the whole day. Let's postpone our engagement ceremony until the evening. I lowered my eyes and said nothing. Pablo didn't know that 7 days could be enough to do many things. For example, cancel an engagement. For example, accept my advisor's suggestion and continue my studies abroad. For example, make sure that he and I would become complete strangers forever. Chapter 1. It was early spring, and Pablo's words felt like a bucket of cold water poured over my head. Even though the private room was warm, I still could not stop myself from shivering. Once he agreed, almost everyone there seemed to let out a sigh of relief. I knew Pablo would never refuse Julia. Exactly. Julia didn't even dare come ask Pablo herself this time. She said she rejected him too harshly back then. Don't be sad, Julia. With Pablo helping you, everything will get better. That's enough talking. Hurry and drink a toast to Pablo. Julia stood up gracefully and picked up the glass from the table. Thank you, Pablo and Miss Victoria. She cast me a light glance, then drained the glass in one go. I sat there blankly, my mind completely empty. The man who was supposed to get engaged to me in 7 days was going to marry someone else first. When she saw that I didn't react, Julia put down her glass in annoyance, with a trace of displeasure in her voice. Miss Victoria, I know doing this makes you uncomfortable, but this is my mother's only wish. If you're unwilling, then just pretend I never came to Pablo. I raised my head and looked at her in confusion. Wouldn't any of the others do? Why does it have to be Pablo? The lively atmosphere that had just returned instantly froze. Pablo's face froze too. One of the others? Sister-in-law, don't you know? In our hometown people marry young. Other than Cameron and Pablo, all of us are already married. Then why can't Cameron do it? I couldn't help cutting him off. Pablo is getting engaged in a few days too. Oh please, don't mock me. Sister-in-law, Pablo is the golden son-in-law. How could I compare to him? Aren't you the one rushing to marry him too? Cameron threw down his chopsticks and, as if I had deliberately humiliated him, sneered in a mocking tone. That's enough, Victoria. Spend the next few days preparing for the engagement. Pablo set down his glass heavily, and the wine that splashed out stained my white dress. That dress was the birthday gift he gave me when I turned 24. He bought it with the first bucket of money he ever made. He frowned and said in a low voice, as for the wedding between Julia and me, she's in a hurry. She probably won't be able to book a hotel on such short notice. So let's just hold it at the hotel we booked for our engagement. We'll move our engagement ceremony to the evening. I looked at Pablo and suddenly felt dazed. That man who had known me, loved me, and walked beside me since we were 19. That man who, right after graduating from college, worked so hard because he wanted to build a home with me. That man who, just half a year ago, cried like a child because I had agreed to his proposal. Why was he agreeing today to hold a wedding with another woman, even if that wedding was fake? Chapter 2. I made up some excuse and left, wanting to calm down for a while. Only when I got into the elevator did I realize that, in my haste, I had even forgotten to take my bag. When I returned to the door of the private room, voices were coming from inside. Pablo, as your brother, let me tell you something honestly. Even if now isn't the right time, Victoria's temper really won't do. If Julia had agreed to be with you back then, there wouldn't have been any place for Victoria. She's dull, and her brain doesn't work fast enough. Oh, come on. You know how it was. Back then it was only because she looked 70 or 80% like Julia. And Pablo had just been rejected by Julia. How is she similar at all? Our Julia is so clever and considerate. If the person by Pablo's side right now were Julia, she would definitely be the perfect support for him. And I heard that Victoria is just muddling through at school by relying on her parents' connections. She doesn't understand a thing about Pablo's company matters. I'm telling you too. You might as well just get married for real. Forget the fake marriage. Why not just go ahead and marry? This Victoria is completely unnecessary. That's enough. Stop talking. Seeing that Pablo still wasn't taking a stand, Julia finally spoke up unwillingly. Pablo is soft-hearted, and Miss Victoria has been with him for so many years. Even if he doesn't love her anymore, he still wouldn't abandon Miss Victoria. Even if he doesn't love her anymore, he still wouldn't abandon her. I took a deep breath and tried hard to steady my emotions. After a long while, I finally heard Pablo's voice, low, carrying a trace of helpless relief. What's in the past is already in the past. Julia deserves someone better. Deserves someone better. What a sincere blessing. I slowly let go of the doorknob and turned to leave the hotel. Every single word from inside that room echoed in my ears. If not for today, if not for this accident appearing 7 days before my engagement, no matter what, I never would have believed that the man who fulfilled every beautiful fantasy I had about marriage would force me to re-examine this relationship in this way. Did I regret it? How could I not? After all, he was someone I had truly loved. With all my courage and sincerity, all the surprises I carefully prepared for Pablo, and all the times I cried blurred tears of heartache because he stayed up late working overtime, there would never be any of that again. Not far away, thunder rumbled, and the rain came hard and fast. So thunder could strike in this season too. I wandered aimlessly until I found a place to take shelter from the rain. The eaves were crowded with people who hadn't brought umbrellas. My phone vibrated softly. It was Pablo. The others drank too much. I'm taking them back first so they can rest. Go take care of the hotel situation right away. Don't let your parents know about this. If they hadn't been desperate, Julia and the others would never have come to me. Don't take it too much to heart. I turned off my phone and stared at the traffic jam already clogging the road. Suddenly, I remembered sophomore military training, when I got caught in a sudden downpour on my way back to the dorm. My roommates had all gone to shower, and I couldn't reach a single one of them, so I could only shield my head and run desperately forward. As I passed the entrance to the library, someone suddenly stepped in front of me. I abruptly looked up, and there he was, the most quiet and taciturn top student in the School of Software, standing in front of me with an umbrella. Is something wrong? Maybe because I was drenched by the rain. My voice trembled slightly. He held the umbrella, with more than half of his own body exposed to the rain. Yet he covered me completely. If you don't have an umbrella, you should first find somewhere to shelter from the rain. You can leave after it stops. I scratched my head and smiled awkwardly. But what if it keeps raining? How long would I have to wait? He lifted his phone and gave it a little shake, and a rare smile appeared on his face. Then save my number, and I'll come pick you up. Back then, there were already vague rumors at school that Pablo liked me. In elective classes, he always liked to sit behind me. When the teacher called roll, he would always leave me, the one who was late, for last. Every performance I joined, he would come to watch, and then leave as soon as it ended. But I always felt that, for boys, love that was never spoken aloud was the same as not liking someone at all. I don't know where I got the courage, but suddenly I wanted to ask clearly, Pablo, do you like me? He stared at me, and tiny points of light rippled in his eyes. So, does that mean I can pursue you? I stared at him blankly, my palms full of sweat. I often wonder when it was that I fell for Pablo. Maybe it wasn't because, in class, he could answer every teacher's question fluently and at length, nor because, on the basketball court, he could casually score the highest points while wearing just a white shirt. And not because, after I had missed one class and everyone else already had their own group while I was left alone, he suggested teaming up with me. It was because, that day, the sunset was beautiful, and I saw his name on the honor board. I didn't hurry to walk on. Instead, I took out my phone and snapped a photo of it, wondering what excuse I could use to send it to him. When Rita first found out that Pablo and I were together, she was a little surprised. But then she only let out a snort. Victoria, don't take your first relationship too seriously. There are really a lot of men in this world, but there's only one Pablo. I tilted my head, my face practically shouting love-struck idiot. Rita gave me a sharp knock on the head without ceremony. My dear princess, you're one of a kind too. That's right. I'm not anyone's substitute. I, too, am one of a kind. Chapter 3. The icy rain struck my face, mixing with my tears and sliding down my neck. My phone started vibrating again. It was Cameron. He sent me a video, along with one sentence. Don't you think you're kind of unnecessary? Inside the dim car, Julia was leaning against Pablo, the corners of her eyes red. Pablo, what should I do? What should I do? Pablo gently stroked her hair and soothed her in a soft voice. Don't be afraid. I'll stay by your side. Whatever difficulties come, we'll face them together. But you're getting engaged. You're about to get engaged to someone else. You won't care about me anymore. You won't want me anymore. I won't stop caring about you. You're drunk. It seemed as if they had deliberately left the backseat empty for Pablo and Julia, so the two of them could pour out their feelings to each other. I clutched my chest and forced myself to breathe deeply. The cold air scraped at my windpipe. Julia rubbed against Pablo's neck like she was acting spoiled and said nothing more. Pablo opened his eyes a little wider in surprise. Yet he did not push her away. One by one, everyone sheltering from the rain got the umbrella that came for them. Only I was still waiting for the rain to stop. The seasons can repeat themselves, and the rain will always fall again. But I knew that the sincerity once handed to me in that torrential rain had long since been washed pale. I took out my phone and contacted the person in charge of the hotel, who was also my best friend. Rita, help me cancel the engagement ceremony. Cancel the engagement? I opened my mouth, but even speaking felt difficult. Pablo wants to marry someone else first. The other end of the line suddenly went silent. In the next second, Rita spoke calmly. Where are you? I'm coming to get you. Her bright pink sports car glided right up to me. The moment I got in, Rita started cursing furiously. I told you ages ago that men are useless. Useless. And yet you insisted on running headfirst toward one. What is so great about Pablo besides that face of his? Bringing you warm water? Going out late at night to buy you barbecue? Men who can do that are not some rare species. I think you're the one who's a rare species, getting moved to the point of life and death over such low-cost effort. If you like handsome men, I'll take you to find male models tonight. 10 or 8 of them, obedient, considerate, and none of them cheating. Isn't it just spending a little money? I've got more than enough of that. I tugged at the corner of my mouth and said calmly, I don't want Pablo anymore. Tell the hotel to arrange a wedding for them. Why wouldn't they make money that's being delivered right to their door? As for my engagement ceremony, just cancel it. Rita looked at me, a little uneasy. Do your parents know? I heard from my dad that your grandfather and your uncle have already made plans to set out. They know. Right after watching the video Cameron sent me, I called them. Their emotions had always been steady. If you discover before marriage that you're not suited to each other, then we'll treat it as a happy occasion. I did not sleep all night. Pablo never contacted me either. He hadn't come home, so naturally he wouldn't have realized I wasn't there. As for where he stayed the whole night, I suppose that was no longer any of my business. I tapped on my advisor's profile picture. The last message was still his long and earnest attempt to persuade me to go abroad for further study. He had said he could recommend me to the best laboratory overseas in this field, if I was still willing to continue in research. I replied solemnly, all right. I hope I won't disappoint you. My advisor very quickly made the arrangements for me. The professor there was an old acquaintance of his. The plane ticket was set for 6 days later, on the very day Pablo and Julia would be holding their wedding. Chapter 4. When I returned to the apartment the next day, Pablo still hadn't come back. I sorted through my things one by one, throwing away what should be thrown away and keeping what should be kept. By the time I finished packing up that huge apartment, all I had in my hand was one small suitcase. There was even less in it than when I moved in 3 months ago. I took out the watch from the cabinet, the one I had bought to wear for our engagement. One for Pablo, and one for me, but I hadn't had the chance to give his to him yet. Miss Victoria, didn't you just buy this a few days ago? Is it because your fiancé doesn't really like it? The sales clerk widened her eyes, afraid that I might be unhappy with her service. We have other styles too. Would you like to take another look? I shook my head. No need. Please help me return it. The clerk looked at me in some embarrassment. But this is already past the free return period, so you may have to take part of the loss. That's fine. Sunk costs should not factor into major decisions. The mall was bustling with people. As I passed a jewelry store, I suddenly heard a familiar voice, tinged with a hint of smugness. Take whatever you like. It was Pablo's voice. Julia lowered her eyes slightly, staring at the jewelry in the display case. Not knowing what she was thinking, Pablo, we're only fake married. Although we're buying the traditional gold jewelry to show my mother, I'm not going to take any of it away in the end. So what will happen to these things then? Pablo smiled and gestured for the sales associate to take out the gold pieces. Victoria will be able to use them when she gets married too, so it won't go to waste. As he was helping Julia choose a gold bracelet, he turned his head and happened to spot me by the doorway. A flash of panic crossed his eyes. Victoria, what are you doing here? He walked toward me. I casually pointed to the side and came up with a lie effortlessly. I came to buy something to eat. Pablo visibly relaxed and affectionately touched my head. You only need to tell me what you want to buy, no matter how busy the company gets. I can't let my wife go hungry. I glanced at Julia, who was trying on a gold bracelet, and said nothing. Pablo patiently explained to me where I'm from. The custom is that the groom buys 5 pieces of gold jewelry for the bride. Since we're going to put on this act, of course we have to do the whole thing properly. So I brought Julia here to look at the jewelry. Oh, right. I'll also need to find time tomorrow or the day after to go with Julia to try on wedding dresses. There shouldn't be any problem with the engagement on your side, right? If you can't handle it, you can call me. I shook my head. There's no problem. There really was no problem. After all, there was no engagement anymore. Maybe I was too calm, because Pablo froze slightly, and his expression darkened a bit. Victoria, are you angry? We agreed that if there was anything on our minds, we'd say it to each other directly and not make the other person guess. No, I looked him straight in the eyes and said openly, you're just helping your little sister. What would I have to be angry about? Pablo frowned slightly, trying to find even the slightest trace of a lie on my face. Unfortunately, there was none. When Julia heard that, she looked up and met my eyes, then said lightly, then I'll thank you in advance, Miss Victoria. There wasn't the slightest bit of gratitude in her expression. Instead, there was a sense of entitlement. I ignored her and casually found an excuse. I still need to go back to school for something. Take your time shopping. The time left for me to prepare my materials to go abroad was already running short. Chapter 5. There were only 4 days left before I was due to leave the country when I suddenly remembered that my passport was still in Pablo's study. Just half a month ago, we had still been talking about finding time to go to Country F after our engagement. The moment I stepped out of the elevator, I saw that the front door was wide open and Julia was inside decorating the house by herself. The huge red double happiness decorations in the living room were especially glaring. All the photos of Pablo and me had been thrown onto the floor. Even the matching couples mugs we had made together in college, with our photos printed on them, were now lying quietly in the trash can. Sorry, I thought you weren't living here anymore. She was saying words of apology, but there wasn't the slightest trace of guilt in her expression. Instead, she looked completely justified. So if I'm not living here, that gives you the right to throw away my things? I looked at her in confusion. She frowned impatiently, as if I were the one disturbing her. It's only a fake marriage. Don't be so sensitive. If these things stay here, my mother will see them. Please try to understand. I don't want to cause trouble for you either. Julia was still holding a photo frame in her hand. Inside it was the picture Rita had taken when Pablo proposed to me. I had thought it was one of the most important photos of my life, and I had even bought a special frame for it. Crash! Julia loosened her fingers lightly, and the frame fell to the floor, the glass shattering instantly into pieces. That scared me to death. This frame is way too heavy. What was that sound? What happened? A noisy group of people came in from outside, but the moment they saw me, they all went quiet. Sister-in-law, you're back. Pablo won't be here for a little while. We rang the bell and no one answered, so we got the password and came in ourselves. Well, because Julia's mother is going to come by the house first before heading to the hotel, we still needed to do a bit of decorating. Don't worry, Sister-in-law, we'll definitely put everything back in order for you later. We promise it'll look exactly the same as before. I looked at Julia and suddenly became curious. If Pablo didn't have money, would you still have come to ask him for a fake marriage? You keep saying you don't want to trouble anyone, but every single thing you do causes nothing but trouble. The living room fell completely silent. You could even hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. Everyone there looked at one another, as if they hadn't expected me to get angry. For a moment, no one dared say a word. Julia bit her lips stubbornly, as if she had suffered an enormous humiliation. If it weren't for my mother, do you think I'd stand here and let you bully me? Tears dripped from her eyes one by one, looking pitiful enough to make anyone's heart ache. Sister-in-law, what are you doing? We already agreed on all of this. Exactly. Pablo and Julia are only going to register the marriage and hold the wedding, then go get divorced right afterward. I thought for a second that I had heard wrong, and my voice rose slightly. Register the marriage? Yeah, Pablo hasn't told you? Julia has an aunt who works at the Civil Affairs Bureau, and she's always comparing herself to Julia's mom. The moment she heard Julia was getting married, she immediately went to check the groom. So if they don't register the marriage, her mom will definitely get suspicious. So, don't worry, sister-in-law. Once the wedding is over, they'll go divorce right away and return our Pablo to you completely intact. Register the marriage, hold the wedding, then get divorced. His life really was going to be very complete. Cameron glanced at me impatiently. Victoria, what do you even have to be angry about? We all heard Pablo say that in a few days he's about to sign a huge contract. If you can find someone as good as Pablo in this life, you should be bowing to him 3 times a day in gratitude. Where we come from, loyalty to friends matters. There's no way you could expect him to just ignore Julia. You've already gotten such a huge bargain. Don't make things harder for Pablo than they already are. I let out a cold laugh. What bargain did I get exactly? Julia, what have I ever done to bully you? In this whole situation, am I not the only victim? In your world, loyalty to friends means treating marriage like a joke. In mine, it doesn't. Victoria, they're my friends. Before I could finish, Pablo appeared in the doorway and cut me off coldly. The look in his eyes toward me was full of disappointment. There are only a few photos. We can just take new ones later. As for registering the marriage, you know better than anyone how this whole thing began. So there's really no need to get hung up on it. You need to understand. If it weren't for Julia, I cut him off coldly. If it weren't for her, you never would have pursued me, right? We never would have ended up together, right? It was clearly already April. The sunlight pouring into the living room was clearly warm and bright, and yet I felt my whole body shaking. So this was what it felt like when the truth was spoken aloud by Pablo himself and heard by me with my own ears. It was this cruel. Victoria, I don't want to argue with you. Go back to school first and calm down. I'll come pick you up later. I walked straight to the study and took my passport. Pick me up? In his dreams. Chapter 6. The elevator was taking a little too long to come up, so I stood outside for a while longer. Maybe we should just forget it. Julia's voice rang softly through the living room. A cool tear silently slid down her face as she said in a low voice, "You still have to take Miss Victoria's feelings into account. And tomorrow you still have to come with me to see my mother. It's too exhausting. Why does my mom have to torment me like this? Why does she insist that she can't trust anyone with me except you?" Cameron carefully patted Julia on the shoulder. Auntie watched Pablo grow up, so of course she trusts him the most. Don't blame yourself anymore. Pablo's voice was low, just like when he used to comfort me. It's okay. Auntie is only worried about you. Anyway, all we can do now is help however we can. As long as Auntie is happy, that's what matters. But what about sister-in-law? Victoria rarely loses her temper. Maybe she's just stressed lately, with graduation and the engagement both coming up. Once this is over, I'll go explain it to her. Pablo spoke in a deliberately relaxed tone, trying to smooth over the unpleasantness that had just happened. So that's how it is. Pablo really understands sister-in-law. Exactly. Exactly. We were worried she might make things difficult for you. Make things difficult? She probably loves him too much to even think of it. Ha ha ha. The others all chimed in. If some other woman were graduating and getting married right away, I honestly wouldn't think much of her. She wouldn't have achieved any self-worth at all. Julia frowned delicately, her tone carrying a trace of disdain. Some people's ambition is to be a full-time wife. Do you think everyone is like you, wanting to hold up half the sky on their own? Julia lifted her delicate chin like a proud white swan. We leading ladies have to be independent and strong. At last, the living room was filled with laughter again. The secretary who had been following Pablo the whole time finally couldn't help but remind him, "Boss, what if Miss Victoria?" After a moment, Pablo slowly replied, "She won't. She doesn't dare. When all this is over, I'll make it up to her properly." I tugged at the corner of my mouth. As I smiled, tears somehow started rolling down. So in Pablo's eyes, I would watch a 6-year love story that was just about to come to fruition. I would take into account that news of our engagement had already spread everywhere. I would fear that I would never find anyone better than him, and therefore not dare to break up with him. He had even already thought about how he would make it up to me afterward, how he would coax me and make me happy again. But the one thing he had never imagined was that I would not get engaged to him after all. A person can have many 6-year stretches in a lifetime. As long as I live well myself, I don't have to care about other people's opinions. And as for Pablo, if not for the fact that I once liked him, I could have married someone 100 times or 1,000 times better than him. Chapter 7. Only after helping Julia arrange everything for the wedding did Pablo realize that I hadn't come back at all these past few days. He drove to the school and stood under the tree outside the dormitory, backlit by the sun. That clear, refined face of his still drew quite a few glances from passers-by. When he saw me coming down the tree-lined path, the stern look he had been wearing finally softened into the faintest smile. "So you really are angry?" I held the study abroad documents I had just finished signing and lowered my eyes. Shaking my head, Pablo pressed a hand to his brow, looking deeply tired. "Victoria, I've been exhausted these past few days. There's also a lot going on at the company. If you're upset, you need to tell me. I'll comfort you. There's nothing of yours left in the house. Not a single piece of your clothing is hanging in the closet." I lifted my head and looked at him without changing expression. There actually wasn't much to do for the engagement anyway. It just so happened the school was urgently asking for my thesis. So I brought a few things back to the dorm to change into. Wasn't it you all who said that if we were going to put on an act, we had to do the whole thing properly? Clothes hanging in the closet were easy to get noticed too. Pablo stared at me for a few seconds. Only after seeing not the slightest trace of guilt on my face did he say, "I knew it. How could you possibly not want me anymore, Victoria? I was just too nervous about you." "Nervous about me?" I tugged at the corner of my mouth, but I couldn't smile at all. "Oh, right. Where's that dress of yours? I remember it seemed to get dirty that day. I'll wash it for you." He still wore that same gentle, attentive expression as always, but all I felt was disgust. I threw it away. Pablo's brows immediately drew together. "How could you throw it away? Weren't you always so attached to that dress?" "I didn't want it anymore." Pablo opened his mouth, and his tone softened as though he were coaxing me. "It's okay. Whatever my wife says goes. We'll buy another one next time." I lowered my head and said nothing more. His gaze slowly fell to the documents in my hands. "Don't tire yourself out. Take good care of yourself. If this thesis can be written, fine. And if not, forget it. I'll support you for the rest of your life." What a vicious curse, I thought to myself. His phone rang at just the right moment, and after answering it, Pablo hurried off. After coming to confirm things with me, he probably felt much more at ease. Now he could go back to being busy with his fake wedding. In truth, Rita had already called me long ago to tell me that Pablo had just gone to her that afternoon to confirm the details of the engagement process. She handled it with ease. "Sir, we'll definitely do our utmost to make your engagement ceremony perfect. Leave it to me, and you can rest completely assured." I imagine Rita definitely wouldn't let him off easily. Chapter 8. The day before I left, I was packing my luggage. One unfamiliar text message after another kept popping up on my phone. They were all photos of Julia in wedding dresses. "Miss Victoria, which wedding dress do you think looks better on me tomorrow? Even if the wedding is fake, the fact that Pablo liked me is real, and the fact that he carefully prepared this wedding for me is real too. To be honest, I really do look down on you. The moment you graduated, all you wanted was to rely on a man for the rest of your life. I could not even be bothered to open the pictures. I replied, Miss Julia, since you already got married in college, I doubt you need to ask me which wedding dress suits you better. As for relying on men, if Miss Julia chose a rich man for her second marriage because of your mother, then surely choosing a rich man for your first marriage wasn't for academic credits either, was it? I did not even need to investigate Julia's little dirty secrets. She kept talking about wanting to be a big female lead. Yet in her senior year of college she had rushed to marry a recently divorced lawyer, only to discover that all his money had been property divided from his ex-wife, and that he could not even take on a proper case in his daily practice. Julia ended up divorcing him, but that lawyer suddenly seemed to wise up and did not let her take advantage of him at all. Stop pretending to be tough. Do you believe that if I just crook one finger, Pablo would come running right over? Then why do you still need to come flaunt yourself in front of me? What exactly are you so afraid of? My phone stayed silent for quite a while, and even so, I could already imagine how ugly her expression must have looked. I let out a cold snort and casually blocked the number. I remembered how, when we were preparing for our engagement, Pablo had held me and rambled on and on about so many things. For example, how two people should never eat the same pear, and how it was unlucky for the bride and groom to meet the day before the engagement. I had even laughed at him, saying that for such a top student with a perfect GPA, he sure believed in a lot of superstitious nonsense. But when I saw him appear at my door, I finally understood that all the superstitions he firmly believed in could be broken for Julia. They're both girls. Do you really have to speak so harshly? Julia sincerely wants to be friends with you. That's why she wanted you to take a look at her wedding dress. She even kindly wanted to give you a reference for the future. Pablo did not even want to verify anything with me. His whole heart and mind were full of Julia's grievance. I'm 5'8". She's 5'3". What exactly would I need to take as a reference? Pablo's brows suddenly tightened. Victoria, why do you still not understand what I mean? She just wanted to find a chance to say thank you to you. I know you don't like her. She's just a little too blunt sometimes. You should try to get to know her. If we weren't getting engaged tomorrow, I think we would need to reconsider this relationship. I looked at his face and suddenly wanted to cry. A person really can have many different 6-year stretches in a lifetime. But how had I spent these 6 years on a man like this? In every one of those nights when I wore myself down until I was half dead inside, the girl he was worried about in his heart was someone else. Seeing that I said nothing, Pablo finally seemed to realize what he had just said. He drew in a deep breath. Victoria, that's not what I meant. You're the person I've chosen for this lifetime. I just hope you can accept my friends. They're the people who stayed with me through hardship. I nodded, which was enough to show that I had heard him, but hearing it was all it was. Chapter 9. After Pablo left, I wandered around the neighborhood by myself for a long time. The night wind was a little cold, making my eyes sting. I don't know how long Rita had been standing at the entrance, but she waved at me from a distance. What are you spacing out for? I smiled. What are you doing here? You're leaving tomorrow. Of course I had to come say a proper goodbye today. She pulled me across to the convenience store opposite the complex and ordered a few skewers of Odin. People came and went on the street. We sat in front of the floor-to-ceiling glass, listening to the wind chimes at the door ring softly. Victoria, don't hurt yourself over someone else's mistakes. And don't keep cutting yourself open day and night to reflect on what you did wrong. You can't change a rotten person by controlling or restricting him. And you can't make him change for you with a few words or even with years of being by his side. And in the days ahead, don't ever turn a man like that into someone suitable for marriage. With me, you'll always deserve the very best. How could Rita not be one of the people who understood me best? She knew that no one could just lightly walk away from a relationship that had lasted 6 whole years. Neither could I. When I found out that he chose me because the relationship he had wanted most was rejected by the girl's mother for being poor. That he liked me because I looked like Julia. That he wanted to get engaged to me because I had stayed by his side for so many years. And never because I was simply myself. I had never felt so defeated and miserable in my life. I was only one step away from falling into endless self-doubt. Thankfully, Pablo was never the entirety of my life. That night, for the first time, I opened the recommendation letter my advisor had written for me. She is my proudest student. She is sensible and serious in her work. Please mentor her well and give her room to grow. If there is anything she doesn't do well, Explain it to her properly. Don't scold her. She walked a very long road alone to reach this place. I sat at my desk, and deep inside me, an endless amount of courage began to grow, enough to carry me through the road ahead. Early the next morning, I boarded the plane to Country M. The journey was long, but luckily there was an adorable girl sitting next to me. She wasn't very talkative, but we still had a very pleasant conversation. She was a somewhat well-known blogger studying abroad, and she had a boyfriend of 3 years still waiting for her back home. I clicked into her account, Cecilia. She really was quite interesting. The plane passed through the clouds and slowly landed on the runway. From that moment on, every gust of wind I had once missed became part of the farewell I was destined to go through. There was no use thinking about whether it was regrettable or not. Victoria, I'm heading back first. Let's hang out when we have time. I nodded. Sure, get home safely. Life in the lab didn't give me a second to breathe. Every day I had to face piles of papers and endless amounts of data. One moment of distraction, and I wouldn't even catch what my supervisor was saying. Anyone would be driven insane by deadlines. Rita was always worried that, being alone overseas, I would end up dwelling on the past. She had worried too much. I barely even had time to sleep. By the time I finished a day's worth of experiments, I was exhausted. The shops along the street were already closed, so I could only go home and cook for myself. Sometimes the first bite tasted so bad it made me want to cry. On the rare days I rested, I would ask Cecilia out, and the two of us would stroll down the red brick roads holding pumpkin lattes. The old-fashioned architecture looked especially comforting against the backdrop of autumn. I had assumed we were only passing acquaintances, but somehow we really did become close friends who could talk about anything. Time flowed through my fingers like water, and half a year passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. Maybe because I truly had no time to go over that unbearable past again and again. By now I could hardly even remember how much defeat that relationship had brought me in the end. Instead, I only felt a little regretful that I had wasted so much time. Chapter 10. After the wedding with Julia ended, Pablo dealt with Julia's parents while also keeping an eye on his phone. Since last night, no. Actually, since 7 days ago, he had not received a single message from Victoria on her own initiative. A sudden unease rose in him, and he couldn't help pulling his arm free from Julia's hold and walking into a corner to call Victoria. Sorry. The number you dialed is temporarily unavailable. Please try again later. Sorry. The number you dialed is temporarily unavailable. Please try again later. Sorry. The number you dialed is temporarily unavailable. Please try again later. After calling 3 times in a row, he realized something was wrong. Pablo quickly contacted the person in charge of the hotel. He didn't dare ask Victoria's parents, for fear of making them suspicious. No, Miss Victoria was just confirming the details for tonight with us a moment ago. Why don't you try calling again later? Rita was editing the wedding video they had just recorded, preparing to give Pablo a big gift that night. Only then did Pablo feel somewhat reassured. Thank you for your hard work. It's no trouble. As Victoria's friend, it's my responsibility. These past few days, Pablo had also stayed up all night, sorting out every photo of himself and Victoria according to the timeline of their relationship. All of those were records from his phone. At first, he admitted that it was because of Julia that he had developed feelings for Victoria, and even when taking photos, he always looked for the angle where she resembled Julia the most. But later, his feelings slowly changed. Victoria was emotionally steady. The way she spoke and handled things was always calm, unhurried, and orderly. Even when she was late for class, she would walk into the classroom calmly and accept without complaint the fact that being late meant she had to be punished. Later, she stayed at school for graduate studies, while he chose to start a business. Whenever he was overwhelmed with anxiety, it was always Victoria who stayed by his side. It's okay, you're still so young. If you finish a tiny bit slower, that's perfectly normal. Look, isn't your progress today already much faster than yesterday? I knew you could do it. Everyone blooms at a different time. Look, my junior's thesis was praised by my advisor, while mine was still being told not to even put his name in the acknowledgments. Pablo, trust your own instincts and judgment. You can definitely do it. And every time he came back from business dinners, there was always carefully prepared medicine in his bag. When he got home, the refrigerator always held the freshest fruit, with cute sticky notes attached. Today's vitamins. If he casually mentioned that he didn't want takeout anymore, she would carry food from school all the way to his company. Once this business with Julia was over, he had to make it up to Victoria properly. But until the engagement ceremony was about to begin, he still had not seen Victoria. Pablo's mind went blank. He paced round and round the banquet hall. Victoria wasn't there. Victoria's family wasn't there. Victoria's friends weren't there either. The giant screen behind him suddenly began to play, showing the freshly produced wedding video of him and Julia. On camera, he was smiling happily, and Julia was smiling even more brightly. Is this the woman Pablo married? She kind of looks like her, but not really. Let's keep watching. Is that your boss's wife? Doesn't really feel like it. But who dares say for sure? Who knows when he switched? As an office mule, do I really need to care that much? Men are trash. That statement just keeps getting more and more valid. Pablo ran like a madman into the control room. Where is Victoria? Turn it off! Turn it off right now. Where is Victoria? Rita stood not far away with her arms crossed, looking coldly at the man who had barged in and gone mad. Didn't you say Victoria had just contacted you? Didn't you say everything was arranged? Pablo remembered Rita. She had personally come out to receive them the day he booked the hotel. Rita pointed at the giant screen that was still playing. It is arranged, isn't it? The wedding looks pretty lively to me. What I wanted was the engagement ceremony tonight. Rita let out a cold sneer. What kind of normal person gets married at noon and engaged that same night? What's on top of your neck is a head, not decoration. You're supposed to use it to think. Could it be that she had never intended to come from the very beginning? He staggered back 2 steps. So from the very start, she had never intended to come. Pablo raised his head, as if suddenly realizing something, and rushed out of the hotel. He ran to Victoria's home and pressed the doorbell again and again, but no one opened the door. It turned out that her parents had boarded a flight back to Beijing the very day she left the country, to visit her grandfather. He kept calling that familiar number nonstop, only to find that it could never be connected. It was the same even when he tried from someone else's phone. Pablo wandered down the street in a daze, unable even to remember where he had parked his car. He had a feeling that Victoria might never appear again. His phone suddenly vibrated. Without even checking who it was, he answered at once. Victoria. Pablo. It's me. It was his business partner. We've got a problem with that shipment to Jing City. They had originally agreed to wait until they arrived and then discuss a solution with us. But now they're not coming anymore. They're demanding direct compensation, or they'll sue. What happened? They were originally coming to attend his granddaughter's engagement banquet, and since they were in a good mood, they were willing to negotiate with us again. But a few days ago the engagement was suddenly cancelled. Not only are they not coming now, they're also refusing to negotiate. Pablo, with the compensation and the penalty fees, I'm afraid our cash flow won't be able to handle it. How can they be this careless? Just because his granddaughter isn't getting engaged. Pablo had only gotten halfway through his sentence when Victoria's words echoed in his mind. My dad is from Nan City, and my mom is from Jing City. But I grew up in Nan City. This time, my grandpa and my uncle will both come for the engagement. Chapter 11. When Pablo returned home, the red double happiness decorations in the living room had not even been taken down yet. Julia was sitting on the sofa, already looking every bit like the lady of the house. The moment she saw Pablo return, she hurried to her feet and walked up to him with feigned concern. I heard everything. I'm sorry. I still ended up affecting you too. Julia stood up too quickly and knocked into the tote bag on the low table. A hospital MRI report from 5 days earlier slipped out. Pablo stared blankly as he bent down to pick up the report and looked at it for a while. 5 days earlier, he and Julia had not yet registered their marriage. Julia instinctively snatched the paper back from Pablo's hand and said awkwardly, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. It turned out my mom only had a cyst. What a blessing in disguise. Right, Pablo?" Pablo lowered his head, lost in thought. Julia, you did this on purpose, didn't you? He suddenly spoke, his tone colder than ever before. Pablo, let's go get the divorce certificate. Otherwise, Victoria really won't want me anymore. Pablo suddenly grabbed Julia hard, his eyes bloodshot. Pablo, where are we supposed to get divorced in the middle of the night? The Civil Affairs Bureau isn't even open yet, and we still have the divorce cooling off period. I can't calm down. I can't calm down right now. Julia had been very pleased with her bridal makeup that day. So pleased that she had run to see Pablo before she even had time to remove it. At that moment, her face was covered with tears and mucus. Pablo, Victoria is gone. She's never coming back. Since we've already registered and gotten married, let's just live properly from now on. I don't care about all those ceremonies. My mom agrees to us being together now. Pablo. When she saw Pablo stop walking, Julia thought she had finally moved him. She gently wrapped her arms around him from behind. Pablo, you be responsible for making money, and I'll be responsible for taking good care of you. I'll definitely make our little home lively and full of warmth. I can get up at 6 every morning to make soup and cook for you. Didn't you always like the soup I made best? Julia, do you realize this is marriage fraud? At daybreak, Pablo was already squatting outside Victoria's dormitory. Stubble had sprouted all over his face, and his tie hung crookedly around his neck. The moment he saw Victoria's roommate, he hurried after her. Victoria? I'm not too sure. I think it was some lab overseas. She didn't tell us the details. You can ask her best friend. I think she runs a hotel. She even came to help Victoria move her things. We don't know her phone number, and even if we did, we wouldn't give it out without her permission. In a daze, Pablo drove to find Victoria's best friend, only to discover that her best friend was Rita. Please, help me make one phone call to her. I'll explain it to her myself. Rita stood on the hotel steps, looking down at him. Come on, doesn't changing her phone number mean she doesn't want to hear your explanation? Pablo fell silent for a moment, then suddenly laughed out loud. I knew it. I knew I'd be punished for this. I knew it. Why did I ever agree to that fake marriage? Rita looked at him with disgust and let out a cold snort. Don't worry, there won't be any punishment. You just need to understand that what you lost was the ceiling of your life. A gift like that from heaven doesn't come twice. She had to be deeply unlucky to end up entangled in this doomed relationship with you. And the highest point of your life was simply that you once met her. You two were always meant to be parallel lines that should never have crossed. You were never worthy of any good girl. Not one sentence mentioned retribution. Yet every sentence was exactly that. Chapter 12. In the blink of an eye, another half-year had passed, and I had completely adapted to life in the lab. By the time Rita mentioned Pablo to me again, his company was already on the verge of collapse. Although they were divorced, Julia still hoped to reconcile with him. I smiled and told Rita that I would be returning home in 2 weeks. My mother was about to retire, and I had to go back to attend the retirement ceremony the school was holding for her. What I hadn't expected was to run into Pablo at the school gate. In just 1 year, he had grown much thinner, and there was not the slightest trace left of his former vigor. Victoria, you're finally willing to come back. His voice was hoarse, and his eyes were bloodshot. I'm apologizing to you. I know I was wrong. Please, just give me one more chance, okay? I admit that I approached you at first because of Julia, but later I really did fall for you. My heart, it was truly taken away by you. I took 2 steps back and looked him straight in the eyes. It doesn't matter anymore, whether you know you were wrong or not, whether you liked me or not. None of that has anything to do with me now. As for another chance, once is enough when it comes to learning a painful lesson. If there's nothing else, I'm leaving, Victoria. After all these years between us, don't you think it's a pity? I've already admitted I was wrong. Just let everything in the past stay in the past. Hearing that, I smiled calmly. I let all of that go a long time ago. The only one still holding on to it is you. Pablo swayed slightly, his face pale as he opened his mouth, but not a single word came out. That very night, Rita forwarded me a video, watching Pablo remain unable to forget me while his company slid further and further downhill. Julia had made up her mind and chosen to gamble everything on one desperate move. She took several childhood photos and wove them into the text, turning a childhood sweetheart romance into some grand reality. They had once walked together along playful country ridges, once felt the tender breeze of high school campuses together, and had been the golden boy and girl recognized by all their friends. But because they ended up in different cities during university, the male lead was entangled by a rich but brainless heiress. She forced the lovers apart, ruined the company the male lead had painstakingly built, and then spent huge sums of money going abroad to a lab just to gild herself. The video included my photo, and the mosaic over it was practically meaningless. I hope the rich young lady will leave us a way out and stop using illegal means to suppress us. We only want to live ordinary lives. At the end, Julia was crying bitterly. A little insider info from someone who worked there for 5 years: the rich young lady was the one who stayed with that idiot boss from nothing to something. And then the childhood sweetheart in the video said her mom was sick and asked the boss to fulfill her mom's wish. That idiot boss actually held a wedding with her before his engagement. Tell me that's not insane. Ha 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 ha. This is literally a novel coming to life. So was her mom actually sick? This totally sounds like my former company. Her mom will probably outlive that idiot boss. Forget everything else. The rich young lady spent money to get into the most grueling kind of lab? Listen to yourself. Wow. If even the rich young lady works this hard, what right do I have to keep lying in my dorm room? Somebody carry me to the lab. Do you even know what kind of account building strategy this is? Can watching this video offset the sins I've committed in this lifetime? Julia hurriedly replied below, but public matters and private matters should be kept separate. Relationships are private matters. How can her family suppress these small companies over something private? Girl, do you hear yourself? So you give them substandard products. They don't pursue it out of respect for their granddaughter. Then you go and cuckold their granddaughter too. And now they're not even allowed to pursue it. Oh. Keep public and private separate? The immoral one is the one trying to stand on the moral high ground. If it were me, I'd collect every penny back with interest. Originally, Pablo's company could still take on a few small contracts, and financially it could probably have dragged on for a few more months. But after Julia caused that scene, companies big and small were no longer willing to work with him. And after that day, Pablo never came to find me again. I heard that he stood downstairs outside my home all night, only to realize that my parents had already taken me back to Jing City that very day. My vacation was very short. I still had some important people to see. A week later, I boarded the plane back to Country M. Life moved steadily forward in an orderly way, even though in the lab I experienced failure. And then failure again. I still held on to my curiosity about life and my courage. In the midst of countless sinkings, there was still a ship that had come from far away. A year later, I came across a news headline on social media: ex-wife grabs steering wheel, leaves ex-husband seriously injured. The video didn't mention any specific names, and the accident scene looked rather gruesome. But I was in the middle of attending a top academic conference, so I neither looked closely nor had time to. What mattered most at that moment was how I, as the only woman at the conference, could carve out my own form and edge in my field, so that everyone would see the rise of women in this domain. I want to be a blazing star. I want to be a trumpet vine climbing skyward. Love is only one corner of life, but self-love should spread across the whole of mine. May I stay bold, and may I stay unbending.